Committee. We've got an action-packed agenda for you and obviously a couple of workshops to follow up this afternoon. We are envisaging hopefully finishing about 12-ish with the main agenda. Lunches booked for 12 and then workshops after that. So I'll get Tracy to get us underway with a karakia. Thank you, Tracy.
Whakatakataho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. I hiaki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu, te hei mauri ora.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm sure everyone in the room is well familiar with the health and safety statement, so we'll move past that. Thanks, Jordan. And apologies. So far I have apologies from Councillor Kneebone, Councillor Graf, Councillor Strange, and an early departure for Councillor Downard. Looking around the room, are there any other apologies? Oh, thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thanks for that. We'll note that possible early departure also for Councillor Clarkson, and he moved. Okay, and possibly early departure as well for Councillor Hodge. So if I could have a mover for the apologies. Thank you, Councillor Nicola. Seconded, Councillor Downard. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Confirmation of the agenda in front of us. If I could have a mover for that. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Thank you, Councillor Hodge. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Are there any disclosures of interest with anything that we have in the agenda in front of us today? Just for clarity, obviously Councillor Kneebone's not here, but you will all be aware that both he and I have sat on the coastal plan hearings, and we do have the Northwestern Mussel plan change in front of us. Just pointing out that that is actually to the operative plan, that plan change, so not relative to the proposed coastal plan that we're sitting on deliberating at the moment. So just for clarity in that space. If there's no other declarations, we'll move on. So we have some minutes to confirm and receive. Sorry. So we have the Stratton Poll minutes from the 14th of April. I'm happy to move those. And a seconder. Thank you, Pamela. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Yes. We will fix that. Thank you, Councillor Hodge. We have two Submissions Subcommittee meeting minutes, the 21st of May and the 4th of June to receive and confirmation. Thank you, Councillor Story. I'm happy to second those as I was there. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Right, that brings us on to our first general item, which is on page 27, and that's the state of the regional economy. Brad actually spoke to us, I think, last time back in August, so I believe he is on Teams.
Through you, Mr. Chair, he'll be on Teams at 11:15.
Okay.
He's presently in this will mean something to some people, but not me, the lockup for something that's happening today around GDP. See, there you go, I got that. So what we'll recommend is we'll break at 11 so councillors can grab a cup of tea, and then we've got Brad from 11:15 till 11:45. We know we'll probably get an hour and a half within that half an hour at the rate at which Brad speaks. So we will still be here because I don't think we'll get through the entire agenda in 2 workshops by 11.
As long as Councillor Smith has no stories from when he was in district, I'm sure we will get through everything. Right, so we'll move on to 7.2, which is our clean vessel plan, obviously changed from the clean hull plan that we previously had briefings on before. And so I'll head down to Patrick to give us an update on where that is at.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, this is a bit of an update before we come back to you in August with a real meaty discussion. Look, we've been working with the top of the North councils, so the 4 top councils, and actually a range of other councils for over a decade now, trying to do a bit better about our domestic spread of pests around our coastline. But this has really ramped up, and the profile it's really ramped up since the discovery of exotic caliper. And as it's spread around the northern regions, you know, the community got really worried about it, which is fair. And this has provided a good opportunity for us to try and push along the clean vessel plan, or the clean hull plan as it was. So we've had a number of attempts to try and get this across the line in the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So the Minister of Biosecurity is actually really interested in supporting this work, which is really good. He's asked us to go back to the commercial sector, which we're doing at the moment, just to see, test the waters and see what the lie of the land is. And then he would like to have another look at the proposal in sort of September. So that provides us with a bit of an opportunity to do a little bit more work. And what we're aiming to do is bring back the clean vessel plan proposal to all 4 councils in August. And inside of that will be a whole lot more detail about roles and responsibilities and who does what. That's a very preliminary step in the long chain of the Biosecurity Act process, so that's allows us to then to bring it back to the minister, and then if the minister's happy, we can then go out for actual formal consultation with the community. So, I mean, that's all I really wanted to say. It's an update before we have a really decent discussion in August. So that open for any questions people have.
Chris.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Patrick, can't see anything in here relating to Tahoe, and it may be too early yet, but is that in consideration in terms of what will be included in the plan? Because I see that probably risks for us in this region.
That's probably a border issue, really, because all they do is come out from international waters into the Tahoe port and then back out again. So that's a Biosecurity New Zealand issue to run the border, to look. Yeah.
So is that the same for tourist vessels coming? Because I see there's a major drop off in tourist vessels because there's been a ramp up in the diligence taken, making sure they don't.
Yeah, anyone coming out of international waters into New Zealand, the EEC is
okay.
Yeah,
so that's not our problem. Good, thank you.
So Patrick, just for clarification, so this is going to more involve moored vessels, obviously launches, etc., and that sort of thing, vessels and marinas and stuff, compared to your average trailer boat owner and movement through that space, because I know, you know, a lot of guys will travel in their trailer boats some fairly big distances, and also obviously throw them on the back of a vehicle, take them up to Northland, go fishing in the Bay of Islands type scenario. So is there any thought in that space?
There has been a lot of thought in that space. Not so much if you put it back on the trailer and drive somewhere. It's more if you're moving around. Yeah. Especially with the caliper now, because people carry it around in their anchor wells. So you anchor in the caliper infested area, and then you pull it up and you don't clean your anchor, and then you move somewhere else. And if you look at the distribution of caliper, it's pretty much where everyone anchors. So, well, it was initially. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions for councillors that they want to see come back in that August report? Anything specific? And if there's nothing that comes to mind, perhaps make sure that we get things through to Patrick prior to that August meeting, so they do have some information around that going forward.
Yep, thanks. That's very helpful. Yeah, any questions? Yes, let us know.
Okay. Thanks for that, Patrick.
Thank you
We
very
have a motion before us to receive the report. Thank you, Bruce. And seconded, thank you, Noel. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. So our next item up is 7.3, which is on page 33 of your agenda, and that's our proposed submission to the Regulatory Standards Bill.
Thanks. Looks like I'm leading off as we don't have a person who's presenting it here yet. So look, the Regulatory Standards Bill, we know it's had an awful lot of press, both good and bad. I guess the staff, as always, took a look at what was coming through the bill, very much focused on our roles and responsibilities. The staff provided staff comments on the 12th of January, whilst everybody was enjoying summer. We sent those around to all councillors the end of January so that you could see what the staff comments were. And we provided those staff comments, noting that there was going to be another formal opportunity for a council submission. So our submission is there in the attachment, and I guess we have kept it purposefully high level. We have very much focused on the separation of the judiciary from government, because that is very critical in our perspective. We have also, I guess I'll take you to the key points of the submission, which are on page 37 and 38 of the agenda. We've got some principles there. The emission of te tiriti or waitangi and the need for iwi engagement. And also one of the key issues, and I guess this is a bit of a pattern and motif coming through some of the legislation that we're seeing, where government is looking for increased efficiency, which we don't have a problem with, but as long as it is increased efficiency and not just shoving the costs elsewhere in the system. And here we do believe that there is potentially, if government doesn't make sufficient provision for it in the legislation, where a lot of the costs may in fact be shepherded back to us. And I guess from our perspective, left hand manage your rates, manage business, don't give us more business that we can't charge for, at least charge government. And then also in respect to the ministerial board, you'll see that on the whole, the team are supportive of good regulation, that, you know, we think it's a good idea, but that there does need to be an independence around the board, and that independence is kept free from any political obstruction at any level in the process. So that is the high level points of the submission, and we'll just take comments from councillors. And sorry, I should say we did append the staff comments to the report so that councillors had them and also others were able to see them. Thank you.
I see. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Trace, one of the intentions of this legislation is that one of the tests will be that if you bring in a new regulation, a new law or a new policy, then you've got to take two out. In other words, they're trying to simplify the framework. So whatever we're putting in there and making suggestions, we've got to make sure we meet that overall test. So is that not coming through in their legislation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intent of what you said is exactly what the bill is. If you're going to introduce something, what are you taking out of the system? It's not as clear cut as when it was first discussed before Christmas of 1 in, 2 out. We've moved away from some of that messaging, but it's, if you're going to put something in, it should go through the necessary tests of, is it needed, and not that it's just adding to regulation in the system. And one of the tests will be to identify what new regulation is that is coming in and what it is replacing. So it's not quite 1 in, 2 out, but it is, I would say, additional tests to make sure it's needed.
So thank you. So my second question then is, why do we need reference to the Treaty of Waitangi in there? Because as far as I can see, this is
Yeah.
property rights. Now they're focusing on property rights. Everybody's got the same opportunity to appeal to the board who are going to be adjudicating on this. I don't see the reason why we have separation of priorities, if you like.
So from our perspective, the Treaty of Waitangi, and having regard to that as a base fundamental principle of all legislation, that we undertake our roles and responsibilities. This is not just limited to property rights. It's to a plethora of legislation, and we have statutory responsibilities to have regard to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi in forming up good legislation wherever that is, right from central, regional and down to the local level. It's the base philosophy of our law and our legislative framework.
Which I think is what they're trying to avoid. So,
It is indeed, yes, it is
so-
the entire intent.
that's right.
But, yeah.
Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, page 37, 38, I just thought there were quite a few points where it repeats itself, especially on the cost aspect. So say on page 38, 8D, and then 7D, I can see why you'd mention it once under each heading, but then it kind of seemed like it came through in B and C under 7 as well. I just wondered, yeah, why not? Because I feel like we're saying the same thing over and over. And it was the same with 5A and C. That was just a condensing opportunity. Then something else I wouldn't mind if we could put it through, if others agree, is current lawmaking, from my experience, doesn't currently, like the regulatory impact statements and so forth, seem quite light on the impact on local government. And so maybe we could add a sentence or two to say that would really help if that was beefed up in some kind of eloquent wording. And then I felt like in the table there was some stuff coming through around, especially the public good, which I didn't see so much in the summary on page 37, 38. I thought that could come forward, especially what was in page 41, that middle row of that table. It seemed like quite an important point, so it could come up further. And I think it's probably somewhere under 5 that you'd put it. And the only other thing I'd heard out and about more about this, rather than picking it up here specifically, was that the bill seems to tip lawmaking in the favour of more short-term thinking rather than long-term thinking. So if just with all the work we're doing that is very long-term, that would be another way for us to make a point where, you know, local government thinks long-term. It would really benefit if central government things did as well. Those were my main points.
For you, Mr. Chair, I think they're very valid points, particularly in regard to the regulatory impact statement is basically the justification that the government has to do before they pass a bill. And I think asking for that implication for local government is
always really, include local
to always include them. I guess coming back to my comments around, we want an efficient system, but if it's efficient for one part of the system and not the other, I think that is something that we should look at for majority of our submissions going forward.
Especially if we could say, you know, local government or territorial authorities and regional, so that they don't lump us all together.
Yes.
Because they might.
And I also think, just in regard to the short-term versus long-term, in many of the conversations that we're having with officials at MFE and MB and MPI around new legislation that's coming in, we've asked them that it has durability through government terms. You know,
everyone asks for.
we don't want to go into the washing machine of legislation every 3 years. And we know that the officials and that ministers of this government are working really hard to get support across the House for what they're doing as much as they are able to. So I think that's a really good suggestion to put it in here. And as we said, we're supportive of the intent of the bill because good legislation, good regulation helps all of us. And I think that enduring
Yeah.
long term is useful.
Just to finish, it kind of gets at the point that feel like I'm trying to make all the time around. I'm going to co-opt the term co-governance for central government and local government to do co-governance together, because currently it certainly doesn't feel like, with that lack in the regulatory impact statement of things on us and the timing issues we see with almost every large document that we need to produce, if we could swim in the same direction, that would be so helpful for our citizens that we represent.
Bruce.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I think staff have done a very good job on this, because it's a major balancing act that you're going through. And, you know, we've all got different opinions about different parts of the process, but the bit that really worries me is even the need for a regulatory standards bill, because what it is doing is adding, I believe, another layer which will lead to further inefficiency. And the reason I say that is that if you go back to the fundamental problem that occurs with much regulation in New Zealand at the moment, is that it's too rushed. It has not been carefully thought out. It's been rammed through. And so the consequences have not been, you know, potential fishhooks and consequences have simply not been identified at the right stage. We have all the ingredients in our current processes in Parliament to do good legislation. But do we always make use of them? Or do we move so quickly that we cause further layers of problem in the system? I have to reflect on where the RMA is heading and what's happened, not just in the current government, but in the previous government as well. I mean, basically, you get the chance to do good regulation, you get it right at the outset. So do it right first time, and don't add an extra layer of making sure that you've done it. That's my view anyway.
Thank you, Bruce. Chris, did you have it? Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Chris that I don't think we should be opposing the omission of Treaty Waitangi considerations. I think we've spent a lot of time in this council opposing the things the government's doing. I don't think that does us any good. We don't necessarily have to have an opinion on that. I don't think we should include it.
Thank you.
I would just say that it's consistent with all the other advice that we've provided council, and consistent with council's direction provided to date. That is council as a final decision. So just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, just picking up on that, Tracy, I see that we speak of a treaty impact assessment being prepared to accompany this in, but we haven't seen anything.
No, we haven't. And the assessment that was prepared in respect to the bill is, I would say, substandard.
Okay. Tipper online.
Morena, I've been waiting for a minute. I think it would be amiss if we think that the treaty cannot be commented on by our submissions, because we're currently covered, we're obliged to consider it anyway as council, so we have to show that we've exercised that peanut. We can't just pretend it doesn't exist as a setting. So just reminding us of that. Consider that it is a balanced submission for what we can say at this point, and no doubt, like other countries' experience with trying to be too efficient with one big suite of legislation, we'll have to fix it in the future anyway. So kia ora.
Thank you, Tipper. One other thing from me, I note that we are worried about cost recovery and that, but I see in subpart 1 of the actual bill and legislation, it does talk about fees and recovery. So is there any comment around our concerns around that cost recovery? Because it does mention being able to charge for a service or...
I guess the challenge, and it's been a while since we've read the bill, but the challenge is around that's for the board and the structure that has been set up and their ability to cost recover. It isn't our ability to cost recover when the board puts in a request from us to provide information or expertise. So it's really around that clarity and certainty that we can recover our costs, because if we get a whole lot of queries, we need to look at ourselves and make sure we are doing our job properly, because ultimately we wouldn't. But 1 or 2 queries received may in fact generate quite a lot of work and require staff resources or other resources, and we just want that ability to say, much like we do with a Local Government Official Information and Meeting Act request, that we can quantify what it costs us and collect those costs from the board. Yep, so it's around that clarity of that provision.
Any other questions? Right, so we have the motion there in front of us.
We'll probably
Yep.
go with B, right? 2B?
Yeah, would you
Yep.
like me to just
Just
read out
outline,
Yep.
the points you picked up
So,
on.
points
discussion.
that I've picked up from discussion? Knock out the repetition in the summary, be a bit clearer there. The inclusion in the risks of the impact of proposals on local government, being territorial authorities and regional councils. Bring up the commentary, or highlight it at least in a bullet point, around public good from page 41 up until the summary. Talk about the long-term durability. I think recognising the balancing act is important around that need for efficiency of regulation, but hopefully, fingers crossed, the introduction of this bill will not just add another layer to further complicate matters. And also, I think just in terms of that clarification of costs and what we're looking for from the Act. That's what I captured.
Thank you. Yeah, Bruce. Noel, sorry. Wrong way. Wrong way.
I'm not so sure that I agree with Jen's comments and the summary in relation to costs. They're under certain headings, and it's at least once in each, because they're talking about the specific heading that's above each one of those. And so I think it's important that cost issues relevant to that particular issue is identified. So
I agree with you, Noel. It was more when they doubled up with under a heading that I thought.
yeah, if
There's-
there's doubling up under a heading, I don't have a problem with the comment. But
Yeah.
Whether it's a specific headings, because these things will be torn apart down in Wellington, and they will, if you only have one comment, it will be lost.
Yeah,
So
no, it's just an observation. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Right, so we have the motion on the screen there for everybody. Do I get them? Thank you, Pamela.
I do.
Second. Thank you, Bruce. All those in favour? Opposed? So we have 2 indicated as against. So carried. The next item on the agenda is on page 55, and that's the Waikato Regional Council submission on building and construction small standalone dwellings amendment bill.
If I just quickly just outline, so we have the National Direction Package, of which Package 4 was announced yesterday. Emma will talk about that later in the agenda. This is one that is bubbled up. It is a small matter. Again, we look at it in strict respect of our roles and responsibilities. Just before the meeting, Councillor Hughes asked me why we're interested in this if it's not a TA matter. And I think the submission that the team's put together very much does focus on key roles and responsibilities. Just as an aside, and before any councillor asks, I did ask our ICM Directorate, are we worried about the punitive effect of granny flats on impermeable surface area and therefore on our drainage schemes? And the answer was no, we don't think it would be of significance. So just wanted to highlight that also for the team, because I haven't had the conversation with them. Over to Katrina.
Kia ora. Thank you for the introduction, Tracy. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as Tracy said, this is quite a small matter, so I'm going to keep it pretty brief today. I'll just provide a very brief description of the bill and where it fits with other central government proposals, and we'll then give a very quick summary of the draft submission. So this bill proposes amendments to the Building Act to enable the construction of granny flats, which are termed small standalone dwellings in the bill, up to 70 square metres in size without the need for building consent. The bill sets out conditions for this, including that the small standalone dwelling is simple in its design and meets the building code, and that work is carried out by authorised professionals. The bill also sets out requirements for owners to notify territorial authorities and obtain a project information memorandum for the dwelling prior to the work, and to notify them on completion of the work. As Tracy mentioned, in conjunction with this amendment bill, the Ministry for the Environment is also consulting on proposed national environmental standards for granny flats under the Resource Management Act. These form part of the broader package of proposed changes to national direction, and staff are in the process of drafting submissions on these packages, which will be presented to the Council in July. So turning now to the draft submission, as Tracy said, this amendment bill will predominantly affect territorial authorities as the building consent authorities for granny flats. However, staff have identified opportunities to improve the recognition for regional plan rules for on-site wastewater disposal within the bill to achieve better alignment between the Building Act and RMA processes for these small standalone dwellings. Therefore, the draft submission is a very short submission, focused only on a few specific matters relevant to regional councils. In summary, it supports the intent of the proposed legislative changes relating to small standalone dwellings. It recommends some specific targeted amendments to the bill to include compliance with regional plan wastewater rules as a requirement for these dwellings to qualify for a Building Act exemption, and to ensure that people who are looking to construct these dwellings are aware of any relevant resource consent requirements for on-site wastewater disposal. And additionally, this draft submission does also support proposed requirements to ensure that risk from natural hazards is being appropriately managed by the bill. So overall, staff consider that these changes would improve integration between the proposals for small standalone dwellings under the Building Act and our regional plan rules under the RMA. That brings me to the end of my summary. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. First up, Noel.
I'm relaxed about this, but we've got to be careful what we want, because there's parallel here. We've got in the regional plan, it's permitted that you can put a bridge across a waterway so long as it complies with certain things. And let people go ahead and build bridges, but they forget that they've got to go and get a consent from the district council to actually build something. You can put it there in the regional plan, but you've got to get a building plan. So I'm only asking for the clarity that if this is permitted, that it spells out what else that isn't covered under this must also be done. So I know it says subject to certain conditions. These need to be spelled out because people can get themselves in trouble inadvertently.
So are you looking for some more wording in our submission? We do cover that, and that was what's raised. But are you looking any other wording or? There may be other requirements here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Noel. Tipper online. You there, Tipper? Oh, you're on mute, I think.
No, sorry, aroha. And if the dog barks, sorry, I've got people just working outside my house at the moment. I'm happy to move the submission. I'm just seeking confirmation because we've done all this work to enable building on Māori land that this just provides further clarity to what's already in place in terms of Papakoanga development. Just asking the report writer.
Yes, the provisions in this apply to any land, so it's not going to impact that work that's been done in any way. And there are also, so under the national direction packages, in addition to the proposals for granny flats, there are also proposals for Papakoanga, and that will be something that we will bring to you further when we present on the national direction packages.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tifa. Any other questions? If I can have a mover and a seconder for this. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Tifa, yeah, sorry, Tifa did. Seconded, Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Right, the next item up is 7.5 on page 63, and that is the Norwestern Mussels Limited private plan change to the operative coastal plan.
If I can just highlight a couple of matters while Chris gets himself organised. So, councillors, this is the first private plan change that you've had brought before you this triennium. So this is, in effect, a resource consent to a plan. So rather than applying for a resource consent, this is where a private applicant can apply for a change to a plan. And the full costs of that change, being the assessment to date and anything going forward, is met by the applicant, which is quite different to when council, the term's called promulgate a plan review. There's a two-step process under the Act. The first step is, has sufficient information been lodged with council to let us assess it? So you will see in the application that I think it was, I'm going to say December 2023. It was in 2023 that we first got the application in to, as Councillor Maher said at the beginning, to the operative plan. It needed a bit more information, and Chris has been project managing that. What we do have is we've engaged a consultant to assist Chris's team for two reasons. One, because we were going through the regional plan review and our focus was on that, but also because history tells us with private plan changes that many of the proponents of the plan change question staff's ability to be unbiased, being that the team are usually the team that are progressing other plan changes through. But that is always done with the proponent fully understanding the costs of that. So a couple of months ago, the first stage, which is have we got enough information to make the call, that is a delegation that my role holds under our delegations authority. It's a fairly administrative delegation in terms of do you feel as though you can, that there is sufficient information to put it out there for the community to talk about. And the team putting that memo together for me, we posed a couple of questions, one around does the proposed regional plan going through the hearings panel cause any problem and challenge? And two, what are council's responsibilities in regard to iwi consultation in this regard, particularly around what must council do? We got legal opinion back, which was in terms of a private plan change, that responsibility sits with the proponent, not council. So that was good. And in terms of the coastal plan, the proposed coastal plan and hearings are quite different to a plan change to an operative plan. So the two can be assessed separately. So we made the decision on that, and what we've got today is Chris giving you an overview of what is sought, and then we will progress to a decision to notify this, and that's something that we'll likely bring to the next council. But over to Chris to outline the proposal.
Thanks, Tracy.
Tēnā koutou kia ora. Seems like ages since I've been here. So yes, here we have an application for 700 hectares of spat catching and holding termed nursery space in 4 separate blocks off the west coast of the region. This is, as Tracy said, this is a completely different process from the first private plan change application we had. This, because it is an aquaculture activity and because it's prohibited under the operative plan, a concurrent coastal permit and plan change application were lodged May 2023. And as Tracy pointed out, the consent application assessed all of the information, commissioned peer reviews, commissioned other reviews for information that was needed with the approval of the applicant. And it was early this year that council and the applicant agreed that the information was complete. The process for the concurrent coastal permit and plan change application, they must be notified, and if a hearing is held, they must be heard together. So we have been, with the applicant's approval, the private plan change acceptance was delayed until the package of the coastal permit and the plan change could move together. In terms of backgrounds, Northwest Mussel Limited, they did research trials, started about 10 years ago around New Zealand. They put lines, either permitted or got consent to put research lines in Northland off 90 Mile Beach, both sides of the Coromandel in Auckland region and our region, on the west coast and down in the Nelson Marlborough area as well. And in the words in their application, the healthiest and fattest spat they found were on the west coast. It's a combination of cool water, clear water, and nutrients. The one proposal too is spat catching under the operative coastal plan. You can apply for a discretionary activity, but it is agreed that a spat is only up to mussel size of 20 millimeters. This is a prohibited activity requiring the private plan change because they are proposing an average of 55 to 70 millimeters in spat with a maximum of 90 millimeters. And in the industry, 110 millimeters is regarded as an adult spat ready for harvest. As both Tracy and Councillor Ma have said, this was traversed in the hearings on the coastal plan. This change is only to the operative coastal plan. When the proposed coastal plan, when the recommendations are made, that is accepted as a decision. The appeals process is completed, and the Minister of Conservation approves the coastal plan. When that finally happens, the operative plan vanishes. So if the private plan change and consent application is not finished by that stage, the application also vanishes. But we think they've got a good couple of years to complete the process here. As stated in the report, the significant concerns that have been identified are potential impacts on the surf breaks on the west coast, including the nationally significant surf breaks just south of Whangaroa, Raglan. The impact on marine mammals, especially the endangered Maui dolphin. Vulnerable seabirds that occur off that coast. Also the landscape values and tangata whenua cultural values. One of the tricky things that we did have to consider are customary marine titles under the Takatā Moana Marine and Coastal Areas Act. There are the Aotea claim that is going for its second hearing in August, but these applications are not within that area. The Whangaroa claims, yes, some of these sites are within that area as it extends out to the 12-mile nautical limit. The MACA Act sets out how private plan change and consents have to consider that. Under the consent, there must be consultation with any applicant for customary marine title, but the private plan change only has to consider customary marine title that has been granted. That's very much a whirlwind summary of a 521 page application plus many hundred pages of peer reviews and reports since then. If there are any questions, I'll try and do my best.
Thanks for that, Chris. Tipper online.
Thank you for the summary. I was going to ask a question that you covered at the end. Does it affect any of the existing SPET operations on the West Coast, this application? But you've already just said there are none in the area that it's applying for, is that right?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Mahuta.
So this doesn't affect what's happening already at Aotearoa and other spaces along the west?
No, the two existing aquaculture operations on the West Coast, an oyster farm in Kawhia and Ross Doherty's spat catching farm in Aotea.
Okay.
These applications, I believe they are at least 2.7 kilometres offshore, and most of them are beyond three kilometres.
And in terms of the applicant's obligation to work with tangata whenua, do they report that anywhere? Do we know that they have, or is that for the courts to know?
The applicants have been attempting to consult with tangata whenua on that coast for a while, and
Pretty hard group to miss. They're pretty organised.
Yep. They whether or not they have done that sufficiently and met the requirements of the RMA and the operative plan, that will be an assessment in decision making. But I know they have been open. They have been open in terms of, I believe, a joint venture for some of this.
I'll be interested in that part, but thank you.
Thanks, Tipper. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Chris, I guess my concern's more from a navigational point of view. That area, when the westerly's blowing, it's extremely rough weather, and they're located 3 to 5k offshore and 4 to 6k, so they're in not shipping lanes as such, but certainly recreational lanes, people going up and down the coast. What, if any, navigational indicators are going to be stipulated to be included on the farms to identify where they are, bearing in mind the rough conditions mean that these are going to have to be, you get 6-8 metre waves out there, so it needs to be pretty substantial indicators.
Thank you. Very good question. There are set navigational requirements for marine farms. They must have lights. They must have indications. And I believe one of the early discussions was how high do indicators need to be when you're that far offshore? That's a technical matter that will be traversed when they come to a hearing. But yes, there are definitely requirements so that navigation safety is paramount. Nobody wants structures put out in the coastal marine area that are very hard for both commercial and recreational boats to discover.
I guess what I want to be convinced of, that somebody's got some oversight, because the regulations that apply to the protected water navigational aids will be totally inappropriate out there, because they just won't be seen. So I just want to make sure that we reinforce that.
Yep, maritime safety actually have a role in determining.
So it's not our responsibility.
We we consult with them to say what is appropriate, and that is put on in the conditions of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chris.
Sorry,
Yeah,
the
if I could
consent.
just highlight, our last private plan change was for the Parihauraki Kaimoana plan change in the Firth of Thames, and the issue, so from a council perspective, we accept we've got enough information to go through the process. Going through that process, Councillor Hughes' navigation safety was also identified as a key issue, and that was assessed through the consent, the coastal permit, and some conditions appropriate to that location was put on. So I can't give you 100% assurance, but I can let you know that it is definitely something that is well canvassed through the subsequent process, and people will get the opportunity to make submissions in that regard.
Thank you, Tracy. Ben?
Just wanted to clarify, this is a lengthy process that we're going to go through, Tracy, isn't it? This is just the first stage, and then there's consenting and engagement. It's a long train.
So, as with Parihauraki Kaimoana consenting, the plan change proponent will lodge the plan change, the proposed plan change, and a concurrent application for the consent. So they run together for efficiency purposes for them, for efficiency purposes for us. So we run a plan change and a resource consent decision together. It is a little more complex, but it's not unusual. Plan change proponents understand that they meet those costs and that there is no guarantee of an outcome at the end that they seek. So yes, it is an extensive process. The Parihauraki Kaimoana private plan change, I'm going to say took about 2 years, and that's about standard for a private plan change process. The plan change proponents have been in conversation with WRC, Chris's team, and our consenting team for a number of years. They are very aware of this, and this is the risk that they would like to take, and they're looking at all their options at their disposal as well.
And so just Chris, I understand that SPAT is becoming very crucial for the industry, and that we may see a collapse of some of the industry if there isn't SPAT found. You want to comment on that? And this in some ways quite a extensive measure to try to address that.
Thank you. Yes, it's this is an issue we've been dealing with in the proposed coastal plan in our engagement with the aquaculture industry for quite a while. The lack of SPAT, rising seawater temperatures, rising seawater acidity, and sediment and nutrients from land are all of great concern to marine shellfish farmers. And at the moment, the lack of SPAT for the last 5, 6, 7 years, what was a very constant supply of good SPAT from 90 Mile Beach has been very variable. And there are commercial on-land hatcheries being developed down at the top of the South Island, but there's a good number of years until that comes into full swing, and there's a question of whether that's going to be enough to supply the whole industry. So yes, it's a move by Northwest Mussels Limited, Alan Jake Bartram, to go for try and solve the issue for once and for all.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Understanding that this falls into the West Coast Marine Mammal Protection Area, are there any constraints around that for them?
No, the Marine Mammal Sanctuary regulations they have restrictions on various methods of fishing, set netting, where you can and can't trawl, and also seismic mineral exploration activities. Aquaculture is a new activity, although the management plan also includes the Hector's dolphin down on the east coast of the South Island, and in Littleton Harbour you have had, Banks Peninsula, you've had marine farms coexist with those dolphins reasonably well for, but it is going to be a major issue that needs to be addressed.
Chairman, I don't think you should be asking those questions because of your position elsewhere on the coastal space. So I think you're getting tenuously close to serious conflict.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any other questions? So perhaps if, so this is coming back to us in July.
Yes, so the next step is to seek a council decision to notify the plan change. We'll bring that back to the council meeting in July, and we will be in contact with the applicant. You may not see that plan change immediately notified. The applicant might say, "Oh, just give us a few months." So it's a bit different to a council plan change. We will want to notify as soon as, as soon as we are able to notify it. Because it's a private plan change, we'll work in with the applicant as to when it suits them. Now, if the applicant takes too much time, say 6 to 12 months, and some of the things such as Chris talked about with the Takutai Moana Act have come into play, then we'd need to reassess. So just letting you know, we'll get the decision so that we've got it in our pocket, and if the applicant says we're good to go, council is good to go as well.
Thanks for that, Tracy. And perhaps, Chris, just a little bit of an outline for Councillor Hughes, just around what navigation safety type items are proposed on the farm, just for a little bit of a reassurance.
We can
That's-
fish out that
Yeah,
information from the
whatever's- yeah,
application
yeah.
this year. Yep.
Thank you. Yep, Robbie, did you want? Oh, happy to sing it. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Thanks for your update, Chris.
Thank you.
Right, our next item up is our water security management plan, and that's on page 146.
So, for you, Mr. Chair, if I can just do a very quick update here, and that we had a workshop last month about this. We've appended the project plan and the communications and engagement plan, taking into account feedback we received at the workshop. And it is a chief executive KPI. Unfortunately, Thomas is unwell today, so Mike is Thomas today, and he will hit the high points for you.
Thank you,
Thank
Tracy. Kia ora koutou, councillors. Thank you, Chair. Jordan, I think there's just a couple of slides just to summarise. Take the report as read, though. My involvement in the water security space in the council here sort of goes back to 2020 when we had a major drought, and particularly the Hauraki was heavily impacted by drought. The Waikato Mayoral Forum identified water security as a major issue, primarily because of the drought and the level of community interest in local authorities having strategies and plans in place to deal with droughts. And it was seen that as a region, we didn't really have those strategies and plans in place to deal with water security issues. A couple of years ago now, we completed a water security strategy as the first step in that. And that really highlighted the scale of the problem that the region is facing in terms of climate-driven reductions in total rainfall, changes in how that rainfall is being delivered, so more intense rainfall in some areas and reduced rainfall overall. Also highlighted, I guess, the need for an integrated water security management plan. How are we and other water-dependent industries, municipal water management authorities and others, how are we actually going to deal with a future where the Waikato is essentially going to be highly constrained in availability of water, both in terms of growth, but also maintaining our current industries. So following on from the security strategy, a business case was put forward in the last LTP, and that included the development of a water security management plan. And that's been a CE KPI this year. And you'll be aware that that CE KPI requires at this point, a project plan completion and an engagement plan for that project. We were late getting started with the project due to quite a robust procurement process. We have Becca, I'm sure you all know Becca is a sort of well-respected consultancy company. So they are leading this project, and we've got a team of people from within WRC working alongside them to deliver the water security management plan. Next slide, please, Jordan. So it's important to note that we're looking at a management plan that spans the entire region. You'll be aware that particularly some of our territorial authority partners, they'll be interested primarily in their area. And interestingly, in some parts of the region, or in all parts of the region, we've got multiple territorial authorities managing water supplies for urban areas within much larger catchments. If you think of the Waikato, the Waipa, the Waiho and Piako. So we have to think of this from a whole of region perspective, but also looking to engage with all of the major users. So this is not a going out to the, everyone in the community. This is primarily us engaging with major water users, those that have a key stake in water management in the Waikato. And that includes the territorial authorities, major industry, major water users, municipals. So this is a non-statutory management plan, but it is likely to inform our policy, so the freshwater policy review and how we manage water in a statutory setting in future. And we would also hope that the management plan will also inform and change our key partners' approaches to water management as well, with a good example being ensuring that municipals within, say, the Waikato River catchment are managing at water short times in a similar way. So ensuring that Waipa, Hamilton City and Watercare for Auckland are all responding appropriately at the right time when water levels are dropping in the Waikato River. We're also mindful that this needs to be a long-term plan for the region. So Auckland has done a similar water management plan, and their plan goes out to 2050. We need to think long-term, and so that's the reference to adaptive planning pathways. So we will need to change our planning approaches as we get more information about climate, changing climates, changing water use patterns. And obviously also we have to be very mindful of direction from central government in terms of, where we can enable regional and national development within environmental limits. I think is there one more or two more slides, Jordan? So this essentially summarises the program or the project. Sorry, we're currently getting towards the end of a process of identifying options alongside Becca and key group of internal subject matter experts. We've identified some draft problems and benefits, including taking information from the water security strategy. The options are sort of very wide ranging, and where the meeting we had with Becca just the other day, it was about how we then work through that options assessment process. And we're using a similar approach, a multi-criteria analysis that we're using in some of the other projects you'll be aware of, including the Mount Karaka trial of CITIF and the Whangamarino project. So it's about trying to cast a wide net and then filtering those options. They'll be then brought together in a range of scenarios that we can test with partners. So that's where the key consultation will be. And also likely that partners will identify additional options that we need to look at. And then the future adaptive future planning pathways is something that you'll be aware of from things like our adaptation planning processes that we're involved with our TA partners. Adding that lens of a much longer term, a longer time frame, strategic view of things. Is that the last? Oh, sorry. The comms and engagement. So we have our comms and engagement plan and identified the key groups within that. We're mindful that we need a straw man, if you like, to show our partners, which is consistent with the direction that council's provided in the past, but then be open to our partners providing further input and changing, recognising that, you know, some of our key partners, if you think about Mercury, Watercare, Hamilton City, are going to have pretty well developed water management plans of their own. So we need to recognise that and bring that in as well. Iwi partners, and I know particularly Waikato Tainui has been doing a lot of thinking around water management, water security, but you know, we know how important water is from an iwi perspective. So that again is going to be quite a detailed conversation there about what iwi partners would like to see in that water management space. I think that was the last slide, was it? Oh, one more. Gosh. All right,
Been
looked at
busy.
these rather quickly this morning. So we're looking to finalise the project and comms and engagement plans and see that that's ready for your approval, and that would then meet the requirements of this year's CE KPI. We see this as a really important project for the region and hope it'll be a key part of new council induction to sort of get up to speed with this. It has taken several years for us to get through this process. And then we'll have councillors being able to have input into the full draft of the water security plan in March once it's been tested with partners, but it'll obviously still be a draft at that stage, with the project completed in June 2026. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your report, Mike. I did note just in that May workshop that we raised the point about making sure that we contact RUD and around users and any potential issues that they see. So just following up and making sure that that is coming through in a work stream, either back to Becca or the working group within this council.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we are looking at the group of internal expertise. I think we're looking at adding a RUD person to that internal group.
Thank you, Ben.
We go back one slide.
That one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now you've got rural users there under consult. But when you look at page 183, which is who you're going to engage with, when it comes to RUD, it's simply going to inform RUD. So it's not going to involve them or consult them. They're simply down there as in. And also the local Waikato community. And I see that targeted stakeholder engagement is going to be completed by the 28th of November. So you're already underway. I really want to make sure that people like Fonterra, major water users and vegetable growers are actually being consulted now, not just being provided with the document in March when it's ready for stakeholder workshops.
Yeah, I think the key there, councillor, is to have something to take to a consultation with key water users. So this is where our thinking is at, and then get their input into it.
Why are you engaging with all of the iwi to involve and River Authority to consult and the water services entities to consult and the energy hydro to consult, but you're not doing that with the rural users or vegetable growers? They're two tiers down to inform.
But just to clarify, the
On page 183,
major water users are identified as a group.
WULF, where rural water users, RUD is simply down there as inform.
Yep.
Not empower, involve, or consult.
So WOLF is our Water User Liaison Forum, which is a multi-stakeholder group, which includes industry bodies, landowners, irrigators. So that's a key group for the.
But you're only planning to inform them. You're not consulting them or involving them in this development, according to what you've got written down.
I saw a mismatch from the table on the
Okay.
screen to here.
So
Precisely.
there could well be an error there. Thank you, councillor.
Okay.
Go back and check that.
Because vegetable growers in particular need to know what's going on here and need to be equally as involved as much as Mercury Energy or Genesis. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. It's not what's showing up in your engagement plan.
Thank you for that. We'll go back and check on that.
Reading.
It's certainly our intention is that major water users, of course, we can't engage with everyone who has a stake in water, because that's everybody. We have to identify the key points of engagement. And for us, the Water User Liaison Forum is one key engagement group. Horticulture New Zealand would be another appropriate group. We can't necessarily go to individual growers or farmers. It's reaching too far. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think it's just that term that you've got inform there rather than consult, which is Councillor Dunbar-Smith picking up on. Jennifer.
Thanks, Mike. Good pick up then. I had 2 points. One was also on that engagement piece of that slide. I suppose I'm just thinking it could be worth, while we have an intention of all these categories of the others fall into, as the project progresses, just be maybe open to the agility of shifting some of those. Maybe there could be a sentence in there to just point to that. I'm just mindful that water is, as we've heard, important topic, popular one. It's emotional. It's been with three waters and get very controversial. I just wonder, when you're getting to certain parts, the pointy end of some of this, where it just comes up that, like with what Watercare did up in Auckland, there might need to be it might be the right time to shift to one of the higher levels of engagement with some, to especially in the development of that long-term vision as well. Because while evidence and stuff gets us so far, it's taking people with us and just saying the project may evolve. So let's keep that in mind, that if something really sticky comes up, maybe we want to use a different method than one before. And then the second point was just around wanting to make sure that the output is definitely usable for everyone. I guess I've just got it fresh in my mind that recent hazards report that we worked on with the PAs to help make a regional report that they can take their specific area from, just making sure that is usable at the smaller scale, acknowledging that you've got the larger scale picture, which is the point of this project. Thanks.
Thank you.
And obviously there are certain points in the process of that engagement where you need to check in to make sure it is still usable. And it's not going off in some direction where it's getting too high level for them more. Thanks.
if I can, Chair, to that point about making it both regionally relevant and locally relevant. And we certainly saw this in consultation around the water security strategy is, if I can say, the different groups who provide feedback will always be looking to highlight their own needs
Yeah,
above
Make
others.
it as useful to them, obviously.
Yeah.
We
So
have to
there
strike a
can be,
balance.
as you well know, it can be really challenging to,
I don't want to do the work for them
Yeah.
at their scale,
that's right.
Yeah.
So
but it's,
We
and it
don't
might
wanna
not be TA boundaries or anything like we used in that report. It might be more of a sub-regional grouping, like we talk about in the spatial strategy. Or, yeah, just making sure that it doesn't, as happens with some of the other things, like the Waikato progress indicators, etc., where averages hide the detail.
Any other questions for Mike?
Happy to.
Thank you, Jennifer. Second. Thank you, Ben. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to draw attention to the second part of that recommendation. We haven't got a paper going to council where the CE KPI is by 30 June, which is why we've specifically worded it
Deemed complete.
deemed complete. Yeah.
So
Just
that
so
once
that-
we accept the minutes on the
It
council
wa-
meeting,
yeah.
it will be complete.
And for all intents and purposes, it was just related to the timing of committee meetings in council, and being that this is a committee of full council, we thought it was sufficient.
Is council the body that determines whether the chief executive has met his KPI, or is the strategy and policy committee delegated the responsibility of that determination? Matter of process, and so
Or is it
if it's not, there should be a recommendation from here that to council.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's exactly what I was highlighting. This committee doesn't have any, as we know, any delegated authority with respect to the chief executive's KPIs. What this committee does have is an ability to forward this part of the recommendation through to council. It's too late to get it onto the council agenda. I think it is semantics in terms of process. The project has been complete. And it is also a continuation of this project for completion of the water security plan in the 25-26 KPI.
Maybe all well and good, Mr. Chair. The issue is this committee doesn't have the power to pass that resolution saying it's deemed complete. That's my point. Recommends to council that it is complete. Acts accordingly.
Oh, right. So
It
you'd
may be
add the word
semantics.
recommends, right?
It may be semantics, but the reality
This-
is this committee does not have the power to deem it complete.
Ultimately, that falls to Circ, doesn't it?
It's a full
to-
council.
Let you guys work it out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we sought advice about the best way to word this. It seems suitable for everybody. We're in your hands, how you'd like to word it. From our
Not going
perspective,
to go in the ditch on it. The reality
Project's
is though,
done.
there's
And also the communications plan needs to be amended to fit in the rural water, so that it's not complete yet. So I agree with Noel. I think recommended is good. It's a process that we're making sure goes in all our documents as we're recommending to full council and not doing delegated authority.
anything else. I did it.
I'm going to leave it as it is. We had a motion. It did pass. It's carried. It will come before us at full council. And I'm sure if there's any concerns that if someone deems it not complete, they can raise it then. Thank you.
Can I withdraw my
No,
second?
It's passed. It's passed.
Right, we'll move on to the next item, which is 7.7 on page 188. And that's submissions to territorial authorities, annual plans and long-term plans.
it looks like I've got this one, as there doesn't seem to be a presenter. So, didn't write it or review it, but I have read it. So, This is pretty much exactly what it says in the title. It's a summary of those submissions. Just, I guess, councillors, you've seen bits and pieces of these submissions. Some have come, some because of timing, have come under delegated authority. So corporate planning thought it would be a good idea to wrap everything together and just give you that picture of the submissions that we had lodged and those ones that travelled through to a committee where they were able to, and those that were signed out under delegated authority. There have been a couple of questions asked around the submissions process and some areas for potential refinement. So we, and when I say we, the Science and Policy Directorate as the main submissions factory in the organisation will be working with corporate planning to see if we can get an alignment of the process so it can run smoother for people. Happy to take and respond to any questions that I can or take any feedback back to the team.
Thank you, Tracy. I have a speaking order of Mikhail, Jen, and then Noel. Mikhail.
Sorry.
Tracy, mine's just on the Auckland one, whether we could go a bit one step further with just with the Tahuia, or whether they, rather than just the Sunday trial, you know, because I do believe that it's a benefit for both, and we've tried to lay a seed and saying that, you know, especially with the funding being readdressed in June 2026, that we go a little bit further and look at would they, you know, fund more of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the beauty of sitting in an open plan office with the rest of ELT is you get to hear a lot of conversations about things, and I think this submission is just a point in time, and I know that the Director of Regional Transport is having some of those ongoing conversations. The Auckland Council submission they ran a very peculiar process, I would say, in that they didn't want to hear people speak to their submissions. It was more based on feedback from a hui, but it's definitely on the work program of the team.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Bruce?
Oh, yeah. So Waikato District Council, I read the LTP document and I'm pretty concerned that I did the typical Control F on the word biodiversity. Couldn't find a mention of it at all. Knowing the past history of Waikato District Council in relation to their obligations under Section 6 of the RMA, I'm just wondering whether the staff had thought about saying anything about that at all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't answer that. I don't know the particulars of what we fed in and what we didn't. I do know in the past we have included matters in regard to biodiversity. It's usually if that particular council is going through a program of identification or have invested or have identified projects of a biodiversity nature that we want to partner with, very much in the same vein as my response to Councillor Downard, it is a point in time comment. We have more durable relationships and connects with those councils that we're using. So if there are some concerns or some matters that you'd like us to take through, please let us know and we can definitely take those through our usual interactions.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, just as an observation, because all the subheadings in the submission, there's nothing in about that particular topic. And when you search through the LTP, it's really hard to know whether they're doing anything, to be honest.
Yes. Yep.
So, yeah, I'll get back to you.
Yep.
Thank you, Bruce. Jennifer?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, obviously this has all been done. I do like hearing the comments about try and do it differently in future, because I just want to note my objection. I feel like we have the submission subcommittee for a reason, and I don't see why we have the delegated authority sign-offs that we then hear about retrospectively. I'd like to not have that be used personally. I think it should just go to the submission subcommittee so we can keep that overview really well. The other point was, I mean, you know, I'm really passionate about getting councils working together, and I just want to be really sure that the constituent councillors do get input into these, and that they get the opportunity to present to those councils. And I'm just not seeing it at present come through from the conversations I'm having. I think that, say, Waikato District is a classic example where the mayor and one of their senior councillors comes along here every year, and I'd like to return the etiquette to them, or at least have the opportunity. If constituents councillors or the chair say no, that's something completely different. And then all of these submissions, I do feel like, Bruce, that there are some topics which would make sense to mention, just because it seems, you know, we are going so collaborative on all the biodiversity strategy, water security strategy. There's so many things that we're asking them to work together on. I realise it's just a point in time comment, but we are travelling in that direction. And so it makes sense to me to comment on those, noting that it is quite a unique experience for the councillors to read those submissions, and they don't often see us in front of them. So we should take that opportunity. Last point was just the regional council submission to the Auckland Council. I just feel like that is such a strategic thing that the council should be more involved in a submission like that specifically. It's naming a particular number, for example, of a request that could have been discussed more amongst the council. I realise there's the Tuia working group, and they're all very sure of all the background in that, and there are these subcommittees for a reason, but it just feels like that is a submission that links to so many things in our LTP and our annual plan and budgets that it would have been really good to be across. It's just my feedback. And it'd be cool if in future we could do these things in that way.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. And I also echo some of those comments around there. There's obviously a couple of councils in my area that were delegated authority, and you don't get any sort of look in on. So it is frustrating. You have some comments around this, Tracy?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say thanks for the comments. There's a real opportunity to refine the process that we run. I'm not, I guess the reality is sometimes we go out and we ask for extensions of submissions so we can take them to council committees, and the council say no. And we've just had one in regard to Waipā District Council, actually. So we do try our best. For those councillors who weren't here last training or the training before, it was definitely a desire of the councils of that triennium, the councillors, to get as much as possible in front of your good selves, and we've tried to do that with some of these submissions, unfortunately. And I know particularly with Waikato District Council, they gave us a date to appear. That was at the same time as we were sitting and needing to make decisions on our annual plan. We asked for the following day, and the council said yes, and then they said, oh, actually, we haven't got many submitters, we're cancelling it. So just an understanding that we try our best, but also an understanding that we need to try better. And I think this is great feedback, and we'll work with corporate planning to put something in the system. And I think what will be useful is when council have their initial fly through our annual plans or LTP in November, and then again in January, we can actually identify for the team those matters that are important to us, such as if your good sales as councillors have given staff direction that we want a real focus on biodiversity, then we know to take that through. Or we want a real focus, or that connect with Auckland is really important, we need to get it right. We can kind of front load these things because they are awfully reactive at the moment, because everybody's going through the same process at the same time. Yeah. But I think there's a real opportunity to step back. It is always a challenge, I know, to involve constituent councillors in the conversation, but at the same time not do submissions by email return responses, and we've always grappled with that, but we do understand that, and this is all really good because we need to make the system work better. So any other comments, we'll take them on board and we'll work with corporate planning and bring something back for our next annual plan. And some of you may be around the table to enjoy the fruits of that.
Thanks for that.
Thank you,
The
Tracy.
last comment that comes to mind then is if transparency could be part of it, like a table that we can all see of when the dates are. So just as an example, while there might be a clash with a decision-making day of ours, I think it's still up to the councillor to decide which one they want to be at, not for somebody to make that decision for them. Just so transparent, you know, and they hopefully make the right choice, but it's just the awareness, because they can then text people that they know on that council and say, I can't make it that day, and all these things that just help build our relationships.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, I think the calendar is critical to get done as soon as possible and to watch the movable feast that it becomes. Do know that puts additional responsibility on Tash to maintain that, but I think it is important that we do that.
Oh, it was more, if we know the hearing days that the other TAs have, if we just get one email saying what those are, then we have an awareness. It's just really hard to keep track with 11. And I know you guys have those dates.
Thank you. No other questions? Then we have the reports and the submissions to retrospectively approve. I'll move they be accepted. Second, thank you, Mikhail. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. We'll now adjourn for a 10-minute break. Please be back a few minutes before 15:15, so that we can get our gentleman coming in from wherever he's been locked away, and so he can give us an update on what's happening in the economy. So back at about 12 minutes past. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.